Welcome to PR Talk, sponsored by the PRSA of Oregon. This is your host, Amy Rosenberg, founder of Veracity and author of A Modern Guide to Public Relations. Help other people find our podcast by subscribing, rating, giving us a review, or sharing on social media. Thanks for tuning in. Hi, I have Domenica D'Ottavio here today. Hi, Domenica.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So Domenica is the PR manager for Fractal. And Fractal is an interesting company because they combine SEO, like real SEO, with PR and content. And so we want to talk all about that. But Domenica, you've been there for about 5 years, huh?
I have maybe almost 6 years this year, which is really exciting. I started off as a PR intern, and now I'm a PR manager there.
Yeah. And so so that's kind of cool to see some longevity in the PR industry. Okay. So you are Fractal and you are really knowledgeable about digital PR. And I want to just talk about digital PR in general, but especially the link between digital PR, link building, and content. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think that I am of the belief, and a lot of people in our industry, especially today, as the industry has evolved, are of the belief that digital PR is the best way to build links. And so, obviously, when it comes to ranking highly in search engine results pages, for your client or your brand or your business, you need links back to the site to improve your ranking. And links are a signal to Google that your site is a quality resource, and that the more links that you have, the more diverse links, and of course, relevant links to that page, your site will rank higher and people will be able to find you. And so digital PR has become probably the best way to do that, to build credibility to your site, build authority to your brand or business, and also provide those links that help you boost into the Google search rankings. So, and we do that through content, through particularly creating data-driven content. So we'll create studies, or we'll, comb data, come up with data stories for our clients and for their brands, and then share those stories with journalists, get the PR mention on all of these, top tier sites. And then, so not only will you get all of the good brand authority that comes with having awesome press for your brand, but you also get that link juice so that your site will rank higher in Google.
Mm-hmm. And then now, just speaking of just online coverage, I mean, now we're hearing that online mentions, just mentioning your brand or your keyword, is maybe just as good as getting the link back to your website, and or sometimes better. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I've not heard better, because obviously having a link is always going to be good. But Google is changing their algorithm and the way that they view sites as trustworthy all of the time. And many sites do something called a no follow when they're linking. And it's basically saying, don't use this link. We don't want you to follow this link. We don't want you to pass juice to this site. For whatever reason, a lot of online publishers do that. But Google has just said, actually, just as you said, actually, it passes. What is it? Do you know what I'm saying? It's not authority. It passes something else, so that.
So you're saying, are you saying that if a link is no follow, it's fine? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying it's not
I'm
fine?
saying that there's still tremendous value to having it. And everyone wants a do follow link, of course, but no follow links can be really, really valuable, especially if the site is a really high authority site and the story syndicates really well.
Okay. So can you talk about, and let me just clarify. So when you say that you do this digital PR through content, you mean you're doing own content for your clients to be, it's like a website or a web page or a blog post. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you'll pitch that content out. Okay. And
Exactly.
then what about incorporating data into that content? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So, one of our favorite ways at Fractal to create campaigns for our clients is to create data stories or to create data-driven content, which can be anything from using a client's own proprietary data that they have through their services or through scraping social media. You can run a survey. You can do all kinds of things to create data, or if you found government, for example, like government data or public data, and you combed through that data and found really interesting insights maybe related to that brand or business, you can create a story and like a narrative and sharing these statistics with journalists who cover that beat. And really not just, comment on the news. It's not reactionary at all. It's like you're creating the news because you have alerted the journalist of this new insight.
Okay, so it can be data on like trends in the whatever industry, or future spotting, like future predictions. And then you kind of mentioned how to get the data, but I think that that's where PR people, I mean, it's a little hard when you're working with clients that might not have the data themselves, or they have the data and they don't want to give it to you. What do you do?
Right.
How do you get all this data?
There are hundreds. Okay, so there are hundreds of publicly available data sources that you can use from either the CDC or the U.S. Census, or you can scrape the TSA's database. Say, for example, you have a client in the travel space, maybe looking at what data the TSA has released and combing through that and like sort of finding different insights would be really relevant to their brand. So that's kind of how you tie it together. So that's where you can get publicly available data. And the thing about these data sets is that they're enormous and time consuming to go through, and they have data on everything. And so it's work to get to the meat of it and find the good stuff. And what you're doing is you're really you're giving a shortcut to journalists and writers who cover these topics, because you're doing the work for them when you're using publicly available data. So that's one way that you can actually, it's absolutely free, which is another thing. Most of the time, you don't have to pay for this. So all it is your time, which is why we really like using publicly available data. Plus they update it, of course, every couple of years, or all the time actually. So that's one way. Another way is you can get your own data. You can create your own data by running surveys, which we love to do. So if, for example, maybe you have a client in the mental health space, you can run a survey using various methods. You can use online survey services, and you can learn about mental health in America and mental health within certain demographics. And you can ask, how has the pandemic affected your mental health? And you can be responsible with the way that you have to write the survey. So you have to be
ethical,
and you have to so it's a little more work, and you have to make sure that you're doing it correctly. But then what you're going to get is a lot of data that you came up with yourself, that you own now because you created the survey, and you're going to get a ton of insights into whatever that topic is, and you can be as specific as you want with it. So that's a little more time consuming. It does cost money to make, but surveys are some of our most successful projects for our clients.
And then if you don't have the answer to this, that's okay. I can add it to the show notes later. But do you have a tool that you use, or a service that you use for conducting surveys?
It will depend on our clients. We use different things for different clients, but one that I use, and I've used actually for our own brand, I've used SurveyMonkey, which is great. I mean, everyone
Yeah.
I'm not
Most people, I think
certain.
a lot of people use that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's fun. And then now I saw something interesting on a post you did about germ data or what is this? Germ studies? What can you talk about
Germ
that?
swabs.
Germ
Oh my God.
swabs. Yeah.
What I love about germ swabs is that they're really fun and actually we've done so well with germ swabs. We're not doing them very much anymore because I mean we've swabbed everything that you can possibly think of for our clients. But what I love
So,
is that
well, let me
other
just
agencies have piggybacked off of this idea and used it as inspiration for their own germ swab thing. So it's definitely really fun to do, and obviously works wonders for link building purposes. I mean, usually these projects go viral, maybe not go viral, but get tons of coverage.
And what are germ swabs, though? I don't know if everybody knows.
So you can get a kit from a lab and you can swab various surfaces. And then basically you make your own comparisons. And when you use the kit from the lab, it will tell you what type of germs or percentage of germs are. I don't know.
On whatever you're swabbing.
Yeah, and the different types of germs, for example, like the ones that maybe cause that are really bad kinds of germs, and then maybe the good kinds of germs, like bacteria, I should say. I'm so sorry, I'm so unscientific, but
Oh, yeah, no. And then so when you guys do that, do you literally do you hire someone to go swab things, or do you guys literally go out and do that?
no, I think it depends on the different campaigns. I know that we've done ones where we've literally gone into gyms and swabbed gyms ourselves. And we've also done ones where we've gone into airports and gone on flights. And yeah, we've gone into offices. Yeah, most of the time we do it ourselves. But
Okay. And then you're doing that. So, yeah. So if you want to do an interesting study or germ swab on travel, like it's just like, how would you help your client if you're representing an airline and saying this is the dirtiest place? I mean, it might not be, I guess you have to get a little creative.
well, what you would do is you probably wouldn't do this campaign for the airline. I mean, that's as simple as that. You don't have to do a germ swab for every single client, only when it makes sense. So you're not going to, I don't know, sign with some major airline and then say, oh my gosh, XYZ is the most dirtiest airline in existence.
Well, right. But like there's got to be some kind of side. So right. So you're repping travel, but you're talking about some sort of side thing that's not directly.
Yeah, it would be tangentially related. You know, obviously never selling a story that could be perceived negatively at all.
And then, so when you get all of this data, you're also big on adding design elements to the data for PR. And a lot of PR people just think of the words, the copy.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about what you're talking about with design elements?
So if you have data, so you have a data story and you have, you know, a narrative that you're sharing about the state of whatever it is. Like for example, let me see, maybe a germs campaign, maybe one of the germ swabs that we're talking about. And you have an accompanying graphic with the story. What it is that there are so many different reasons why we really think it's important to have visual representation. First of all, because data visualization right now is huge. I mean, if you look at all of the major publishers, they're doing a lot of the time doing their own data visualization because it helps the reader understand quickly what the story is about and what like the major insights are. But it doesn't also help their audience. It also helps them quickly understand what you're pitching them. So journalists we know are super busy, and I don't know, I read a statistic a while back. It's like 5 to 1 PRs outnumber journalists. I mean, we are just sending them stuff all of the time. And so they have to sort through it quickly and figure out if it's something that they want to cover. And when you create an infographic or a data visualization that quickly explains what the study is about, then they will be able to make a decision even quicker. So it's definitely appealing to them in that way. And oftentimes they will even include infographics or whatever the graphics that we create in their stories to help their readers as well understand.
Okay. And so I guess this kind of segues into just pitching best and worst practices, but, and how to pitch for digital PR. But, when you're creating an infographic and you're sending it to the press, do you just add that into the email? Like, so you're not making sure that they actually click on the blog, you're actually attaching or pasting that infographic into the email so that they see it right away?
Actually, no, I don't think so. I mean, we have a team of PRs and we all do more or less the same thing. So I wouldn't say we never do that, but most of the time what we do, because this is also link building, you have to remember, is that we link back to the full study page. So that will be a page that has all the data, all the story, has the methodology, which is extremely important to include when you're working with data. You have to make sure you're clear and honest and ethical about how you conducted the study or how you got the data and how you analyzed it. And that's on every single page because journalists need to know where it came from. What is the source? Make sure that it is up to the editorial standards of their publisher. But we will link to a page, and then when a journalist covers our project, then they will link back to that page and they can find all of the images on that page.
Yeah. So I just worry sometimes about, so we don't attach or add in images into our emails because we're afraid that they'll go to junk. But I just worry, well, what if they don't click on the link? That's a lot of trust for me to know. I know you have to write a good pitch, but you've put all this time, into the visual and you're just trusting that the press will click on the link. It's just like, so
I know exactly. And that's another thing. So, I probably wouldn't attach. I've heard feedback from journalists over the years, over 6 years of feedback from journalists saying, I don't open unauthorized attachments, or don't send me attachments. I can't view them. Like just even technological issues, even if they're getting the email and it's not going to spam, they don't want to look at attachments, at least that's what we've heard. So a link actually may be safer for them, for like security purposes. But another thing I actually knew, which I'm not sure where I heard this or how I found out, but Google tends to, if an email is like loaded with links, it tends to go into spam, or it might go into spam. So another thing maybe to be aware is not to be linking all over the place in your email, just maybe linking one time.
That's a cool tip. I didn't know about that. So what about, let's just talk in general. Like, how do you pitch, and your follow-up? What's your follow-up look like? And then how do you tweak all of this just for digital PR versus more traditional PR?
Right. So we conducted a study not too long ago, 2019, where we surveyed 500 journalists from publishers from the New York Times and BuzzFeed and Mashable and, all of the sites that we all want to be on all the time. And we asked them a number of questions, all about digital PR, all about what they want to see from us, what they don't want to see from us, how we can improve. And we got so much interesting data from that study. And we have discovered sort of like the sweet spot and how to pitch. And I'll share a few things that we've learned. So we try not to send pitches that are too lengthy. So in the survey, we found out the ideal length for a pitch was under 200 words. 100 to 200 words, actually. 58% of people we surveyed said that that was the sweet spot. And we also found that follow-ups, writers, 60% of journalists prefer one follow-up, and a whopping 25% of journalists prefer zero follow-ups.
Of course.
So
Yeah,
definitely,
of course.
probably
Just
not
one
sending
follow-up.
more than one, unless you depends on, like, maybe you see them opening in an email 150 times, then maybe you can send a second follow-up. Or, you know, if there is some new insight available that you forgot about, or if you're just sure they're the perfect fit, maybe you can send them two. But I would definitely want to send just one. Actually, that's what I do. And we found, when is it acceptable for you to follow up? And they were like, 57% of them said 3 to 7 days. And only around 25 said 1 to 2 days. So I would say wait at least 2 days, maybe 3 days before you contact them again about the email. Because like I said earlier, like, they're so busy and they're getting so many emails. A nudge is really good. Like, and a good follow-up with new information, a follow-up that's not too demanding, and something to just say, hey, did you get a chance to check out what I sent you? Here are some of the cool things about that project. Thanks very much. Let me know, you know?
Just really basic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a cool study. I'm excited to check that out because it's really, really direct. I mean, we know about, okay, make your pitches shorter, but that specific word count is really cool. So is there anything else in terms of best and worst practices for pitching? And you know, of course, I'm interested mostly in the digital side, and I don't know, honestly, I think that maybe all you guys do is digital PR. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how it's different from traditional PR.
We occasionally do traditional PR for our clients, but mostly I would say 95% of the work that we do is in the digital PR space. And we do digital PR because we know that it works, and works really well. And it can even work for more traditional kinds of like just getting your client mentioned in something or quoted in something. Digital PR, like with the tactics that we use, are really effective. So what would I say? I think one of the most important things that a PR person can do today is to try to build relationships with journalists rather than doing this sort of mass email sending, very like templated approach. And one of the things that we can do to build relationships with journalists as PRs is, first of all, I would want to say, first of all, be human being and do not just be a robot. We have a mutually beneficial relationship with journalists, and some journalists may not think that, but a lot of the material journalists write about is been sent to them by us. So it is mutually beneficial. So, but you don't want to be too demanding, and you want to be offering them something that they would want to cover. And I know that sounds like duh, but you wouldn't believe how many of these journalists get so irrelevant pitches that are not relevant to their beat, not relevant to what they cover. The PR person doesn't even know where they currently write. They might say, I haven't written for this site in 10 years and you're pitching me for it. Or like, you know, they just haven't done their research at all. So build a relationship with this journalist when you're pitching them, but also when you're not pitching them. If you're going to work for a client in the travel space for the next 2 years, then get to know some of the top travel writers that you think would be compatible with the stories that you're going to tell, and follow them on Twitter and have conversations with them on Twitter, and sort of just let them know that you're a human being too, and that you have shared interests. And like, when you pitch them, they'll recognize you and they'll respond favorably to you, because you're not just another name in their inbox trying to get them to link to you, you know?
Definitely. So any last minute thoughts on how to stand out? So I mean, I really think that, yeah, the relationship aspect is key, but you know, if you haven't built that relationship yet, what about standing out? How can you just do that in an email pitch?
So, in one of our studies, we found that the best way to sort of connect with a journalist is to remind them if you've worked with them before. So one thing that you can do if you've worked with them before on projects is you can reference that past project, because they might not remember actually if they covered something that you sent them a while ago. Another thing you can do if you have no working relationship with them at all is you can try to express like a similarity that you have with them. Like when I was saying being human. So if I see that a writer I'm about to pitch posted a picture of their beautiful corgi puppies or something, I don't know, whatever it is, on their digital footprint somewhere on Twitter or Instagram, I might send them an email that says, hey, hello from a fellow corgi lover. I loved your tweet. Here's a picture of my dogs. I don't know, something like that, just to break the ice a little bit and say that you've researched them. You're contacting them because you know what they write about, and you're not just, sending a mass templated email.
Okay. So yeah, so you basically recommend getting on that relationship building right away. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. This was great. It was good to just connect with you and just hear a little bit more about fractal studies and, all of your great tips. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thanks for listening to the PR Talk podcast. Find Amy's book, A Modern Guide to Public Relations, plus more PR Talk episodes at prtalk.co. And remember to subscribe, rate, and review.